demonstrate, we are close to the pole, somewhat closer to the pole, along just a time exposure, just put the camera on the ground and come back later. Just looking up the radio mast and all the circles from the stars as they're rotating, as the Earth is rotating. This is a stolen photo. This is a modern photo of the aurora because it's very hard with old film photography to get even a sensible idea of what an aurora is like, but you've seen it on TVs now so often that it's almost, oh, I've seen that before. They're remarkable. And the thing you don't get unless you're there is the rapid movement. It's a curtain that's just wavering and moving all the time. It's a fabulous experience. Black night and the aurora comes up and it's just a wonderful thing. It sort of puts a good edge on being there. Here it is again, this sort of thing. Husky pups. We had several batches of pups born when we were there. And penguins. Now we went out, the emperor penguin is the one that gets a lot of attention. They're the biggest penguin, and they breed in the winter. And they breed in the winter so that by the end of the winter they're fit to go to sea. They gather together closely, and we took a trip away, date another one. The other occasion though I was away from camp was to be able to go to the Taylor Rookery, which is about half a day's drive, which probably to you and me in a car would be an hour to get there. And I went with two other guys, and there someone is. You notice they've got their chicks here. The male, of course, is the one that carries the chick. The female lays the egg. The male takes over, carries the chick. The females put her energy into developing the egg, lays the egg, leaves it with the male, and she goes off to sea. But at this time of the year, this is August that I went there, the sea is a long way out. It can be 200 kilometers out from the coast. Antarctica, the area of Antarctica is more than twice in winter what it is in summer. If you go to the edge of the ice and say, well, this is Antarctica, in winter it's twice as big as in summer because of the sea ice. So there's a proud father. There's the rookery actually in the middle. It's not a photograph of this bloke. There is the rookery. Hundreds. And the two fellows, I was with the doctor, came with me, or I went with him, and one of the engineers to drive the vehicle we went on, and we counted the penguins, and that was fairly easy. We shepherded the penguins towards one end of their patch, and then got what looked like a leader, a bit like what they call them with sheep, the bellwether, to walk past us, and they started to follow. We just had to stand there with a counter. But I tell you what, after 3 hours standing at -20, oh, it was cold. Oh my heavens. Now, this photo, these two fathers are having a conversation. I hope you can see this from the back, can you? Yes. The one is saying, look what I've got here. And the other one is saying, don't worry, I've got one too. And there it is. They're the cutest things. It's lovely, cute. They get, they stand taller as a sail, the penguins. They're quite tall. Birds, animals, whatever you call them. And here they are. And you can, whether you can pick it out, they're the ones that are half height in there. They're the fluffy half height. They're the chicks. So they've got a brown down all over them. They're not waterproof. If you put them in water, they would sink like a stone. So they've got to stay on land and be fed by the parent bird. And when the mother gets back from doing a lot of fishing with a very full gullet, come back, take over from dad, who can go away. She feeds them to get them to grow up through the down stage and to start to shed that and develop greasy feathers. They sometimes gather as a sort of creche of chicks for their own protection, and against the wind and so on. They're herded together. These birds, as all animals, have amazing instincts to do certain things we just don't understand. But here they are. We can only admire what they are. Now these are different penguins. These are Adelie penguins, angry little coots. They're very angry when you take one of their eggs. Oh, they're nasty. And the other thing about them, we only took one. They laid 2 eggs. We took one, and they're good cooking, good scrambled eggs. I didn't feel comfortable about a sort of boiled egg, but a scrambled egg's excellent. That was from a rookery not far from Mawson Station. So a couple of us went there and souvenired a few eggs, brought them home for fresh egg meals. But they are so funny. They build a little nest. Now, lots of creatures build nests. Dogs build nests when they can. Birds build nests. They build a nest out of little pebbles. And while one is getting a pebble, another one says, "Oh, that looks pretty good." And he pinches a pebble from that one, puts it on his pile, or hers. And so there's a lot of stealing going on as each one, the pebbles are being swapped around, as each one tries to get some more from somewhere else, but while his back's turned, his neighbour's pinching one from him. Curious. There's one nursing a chick, and there are 5 of them standing there talking to each other and talking to us and standing there for the photograph really. It's really a posed photograph with a bit of an iceberg in the background or a cliff in the background. Seals, that's the other thing we had was Weddell seals. With a pup, just fairly newly born pup, they come to the sea ice to pup, and then within a month they are mating again, and they have an 11-month gestation period. So they have an annual breeding pattern based on 1 month of freedom, and there's the pup again. Now that picture, you've seen everything close up, so it all looks like it's sort of solid. Antarctica is only a couple of % of land, of rock. The rest of it is ice. And that gives you an impression of actually what it is. That it's a huge amount of ice. The mountain, the rock base is all there, but it's a kilometre or 2 or 3 under what you see. So that's Antarctica. It's an extraordinary place. There we are out again on a little run. We're going to go inland in a minute. Here's Sid Kirkby doing some survey work, astrofixing on the Napier Mountains. Now, when they set up, they went inland with vehicles and dogs, and because of the winds, you can't just put a tent up. You've got to sort of dig the tent in so the wind can't get underneath and blow it away. So there's a lot of work associated with setting camp and breaking camp. Here's what they went with. These World War II vehicles that were bought after World War II, made by International, I think, and tracked vehicles, so they were very useful. Weasels, they were called, and put full cab. They weren't always full cabin, and they would pull quite a load, and they would break down regularly. And here's a picture of the D4 pulling some gear in a sled, and a weasel on a sled, because sometimes it's more economic to not use the fuel in 2 vehicles, but to have one towing the other. Given that on ice, a sled runs fairly economically in terms of fuel consumption. And notice the blackened steepness of the mountains in the background, very severe. Here's they're coming to a point. You'll notice that one of the principal items to be towed on the left there of the picture are oil drums, because you've got to carry fuel. No BP up around the corner, of course. I mean, I didn't need to say that, But back at camp, it's important to realise there's no Bunnings around the corner either. So anything you do has to be within what you've taken or what is in the supplies that have been brought with you. A very vital thing. There was one occasion I remember just talking to one side for a second. A fellow had been digging some snow out. He was looking for, I think he was searching for some kerosene drum. And I told you that all the drums and all the boxes got covered with snow. And he was trying, I could tell he was getting very frustrated, and he was about to break a shovel with a wooden handle. And I stopped him, because if you break a shovel, there may not be a wooden handle to replace it. And that shovel's no use anymore. So, you know, there may be, we may have had enough spare shovel handles, but there may not be. If you gave way to these frustrations, sometimes what you're doing is putting your own lives in jeopardy. So here's fine weather, it looks great. And there they are, fine weather, there's a camper, there's a trailer caravan behind a D4 tractor, and that's what they slept in. There's another D4 tractor, so there are two tractors there and caravans. Now, if they run into weather, then that's what they wake up to. So they've been in fine weather, they've been travelling along, getting to where they want to go to, and then the blizzard comes up, snow comes up, snowdrift builds up, and the next thing you've got to spend half a day digging your way out. The guys that went inland, I didn't go inland, but I can show you what some of the guys put up with. It was part of my experience in sharing what they were doing on their inland, the surveyor and geologist on their inland adventure or expedition. And I tell you, it was very trying and tested them severely. You'll notice there are dogs there as well, and so they got out and travelled further, but it goes on. Here's another one of the sort of thing they might wake up to and have to find their way, probably go back to bed and dig yourselves out when the weather clears. It's a severe place to live. Minus 68.4 Fahrenheit. Minus 68.4 Fahrenheit. Remembering 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing point, so that's 100 Fahrenheit degrees below freezing. Just got there, that's the OIC and the geologist. They were inland on that trip. The last I experienced was minus 20 Fahrenheit when I went down to the rookery. Here's inside one of the caravans, and that's what happened. If you're inside, your own breath is conveying moisture, which then condenses, and the rime builds up inside. And even if you sleep in a sleeping bag, which I tried, I did once overnight outside, and I'll tell you what, when I came to in the morning, and well, I didn't do much sleeping, but when I got out, they're sleeping with two sleeping bags, double sleeping bag and a down suit, and the sleeping bag would snap. It would break. It didn't tear apart, but it would snap because it was all frozen. Not comfortable sleeping, I tell you. But then I didn't have to. Now that's the Lambert Glacier. That's well inland. That glacier is 500 miles, 500 kilometres long, 50 kilometres wide, plus and minus, varying, and with many, many tributaries, and heading for the coast. It moves just about a metre a year, but just ever so slowly, but absolutely irresistibly, it is travelling from the high to the low, travelling down towards the sea. And that gives rise ultimately to floating off and becoming, when it breaks loose, an iceberg. And some icebergs, by the way, are large. When we were there was an iceberg noted that was 80 kilometres long. 80 kilometres long, you'd have a township on it, you know. They're not things that you drive around or you drive around in a motorboat. They're large things, some of them. But and you notice, you can see the flow lines that's Antarctica. It's not just the nice pictures that we see and enjoy. Nothing wrong with seeing and enjoying the coastline. That's great, and the penguins and everything. That's terrific. But this is Antarctica. There are some dogs. Huskies are most extraordinary things. They don't drink water because there isn't any. They eat snow, and they can sleep outside like that. And about every hour or two, they'll get up and shake themselves a bit, shake the snow off, snuggle down again. Most extraordinary, tough animals, those things. Wonderful. Not all that friendly, by the way, but still. Now, this is the other value in huskies. This is a husky who lost himself down a crevasse. So travelling on, leading a pack and leading a sled, the sled driver watching carefully, and his lead dog goes down a crevasse, turn the sled on its side to act as a brake, because the sleds are sliding, so turned on its side and go and help the dog out. He went down twice, this one. It was a female actually, and so she's been rescued there. Now there's a scene. That was a severe case of snow encasing some of the equipment. Some of the caravans had to be dug out. Extraordinary place to field men. Tell me a little bit about the air team. They were really shortchanged in a big way. They were given this aircraft, first Australian aircraft to be fitted with Doppler navigation, which was great, very advanced. Also provided with a spare engine, which didn't match the engine that was on it. The engine that was on it hadn't been fully tested. So here they are in sub-zero temperatures outside, because there was no hangar to accommodate it, changing engines on a DC-3 on the ice. Most extraordinary thing. You can see a chain there to lift it up and so on. Got it running and into the air, but finding because it wasn't compatible, they had to change every ancillary on the engine, taking the ones off the engine that was on it, because the new ones didn't match. So the short engine was fine, but the long engine was not. There we go, more field work. Crevasses. The field team, there's one of the weasels, and you can tell what's happened. It's fallen into a crevasse. Crevasses aren't visible, you see. You don't see a crevasse and say, I'll walk around that. It's hidden by snow. And if you're driving a heavy vehicle, you might walk across it, and you might break it. A heavy vehicle more likely will break it. And here's an example, a weasel in a crevasse. So they set to, the engineers, dig a hole and put a post in it and attach D4 if D4's got past this point, and all sorts of hard work, half day's work, and there's the sort of thing that's happening. You can see a chain on the front, a balk of timber here, and they get out, and away they go. Sometimes, as a result of the work, they dislodge the track. Now, can you imagine at minus 20 or minus 30 degrees, you've got to put a new track on a weasel on the snow? Unbelievable things that the guys had to do. But there it is, without the track. Here's the track, and there are the little bogey wheels, and they've got to put that track on them. And here's a drum. There's a part of the hoisting, or part to rest it and hold it up. Now we've got a D4 in a crevasse. These guys did an amazing job. It wasn't amazing to put in a crevasse, it was amazing what they did getting them out. Now, there's a crevasse, and there's a D4 tractor in a crevasse. It had a driver in it. He got out, broke the front window, and someone broke the front window and got him out. And what were they going to do? So they had two D4s and equipment, and they're heading for the Prince Charles Mountains, and there's the D4 tractor down a slot, fully under, as you can tell. So over 2 or 3 days, they dug a ramp without dislodging the wall that was holding the tractor into place, dug a ramp so that ultimately, with chain blocks and the other D4, and then finally they could break, by pulling the D4, break the remaining sort of wall and pull the tractor out. An extraordinary achievement, absolutely extraordinary. Those two blokes walking in the snow. Now, let me tell you about this. On the 8th of December, 8th of December, the meteorologist said there's a very severe weather condition coming, so be prepared. So the RAF team positioned both their planes up at the inland airfield, tied them down as they did, and prepared for whatever was coming. And what hit them was not what they expected. And we lost radio contact. There was no contact between Mawson and Rumdoodle, the name of the inland base. And on the 9th, after 24 or 36 hours of trying to contact, this message finally came through. Both aircraft and airfield installation wrecked. Can't find decoder. Beaver blown away in pieces. Have long memo, but connection too bad. QRX. So what was that about? There's the Beaver aircraft. I showed you when it was flying. I showed you when it was on the ground. That's how it appeared after the most extraordinary and severe blizzard which you can imagine. This idea of having an airfield in the Lever Mountain is not a good idea, actually, because having an interruption to the wind flow around the mountain actually causes huge turbulence and acceleration on the lee side. And what happened was the most extraordinary wind speeds, they couldn't even gauge them. The wind gauge got blown apart and bent over and all sorts of things. 44-gallon drums of fuel were blowing along, standing up, not rolling, blowing along. One of the caravans broke loose, and one of the fellows up there got hold of one of his tractors and moved it and put the dozer blade in front of the caravan to stop the caravan being blown away, and yet they were anchored down. It was an extraordinary event. There's the Beaver aircraft. What happened to the DC-3? I went out with a couple of others, some dogs, and one fellow on a motorbike. And can you see up there? Can you see that? That's the DC-3 just at the edge of the escarpment before we're on the sea ice, before the last stages before it would go into the sea. That was 10 miles, 15 kilometres from where it had been held down, but in the wind it was simply broke away and was carried that distance. There we're climbing up, several of us there, climbing up to the DC-3. There it is, and it had been so disturbed that the stresses caused a rippling in the hull of the plane. It was no longer just smooth and straight. It had been so stressed that it was ripples in the frame. And the engines displaced, the propellers displaced. Extraordinary. A couple of us removed what I knew the Fairchild cameras were valuable. I took those out and we brought those back, and the Doppler navigation gear was brought back. Otherwise, there it rests. It's not the only plane that's suffered a loss, and there was a similar DC-3, but a Russian one, just inland from Mawson, and for a good while you could look from Google Earth and you could see it on the plateau, but it's submerging, just going gently, you can still pick it out. There's Thailand arriving, and of course most of us very relieved. 2 ships, Magadan came in as well, most unusual event. Here they are. I went on a further trip east to carry out some observations. They took me there and then back, and there I am unloading. Some penguins to say hello to. because there I am doing some magnetic observations. There's a shot, and I think we'll leave it at that. So I've got probably 3 minutes to answer questions. That's on our way home, looking out after the ship, and we're on our way back to Australia in March 1961. So I've got 3 minutes for questions. It's 27:27. We're due to finish at 7:30.
Yeah.
So we've got time for a couple of questions quickly. Yes?
I know the shortage of film was a problem with photography, but what about the temperatures? Did the chemical process in photography work equally well at that low temperature?
Yes, it did. When we got back to Melbourne and submitted our films to Mr. Kodak, and they sent back the slides as developed and turned into from negative into positive, they were fine. Yeah. And the black and whites down there were fine. Yeah. No, the chemical process was fine, as long as you didn't. If I was doing black and white, of course, I was in my laboratory and I was using room temperature water to develop them in, which was probably 10 degrees C, not 25 degrees C. I tell you, we lived at low temperatures. Yeah, and it still worked. However, some cameras wouldn't work, and one of the movie cameras, Jeff Newton, was appointed photographer. He was the doctor, and there was no doctor's work to do. So he did other things, and he had to take his camera apart and re-grease it for the movie because the oil in it was too sticky. Yeah, so all sorts of things to think about. Yeah. Yes, Tom?
I was also curious about the motorcycle surviving in...
Sorry?
The motorcycle?
Motorcycle, yeah?
Yeah, surviving in...
Working.
Yeah, exactly, working in such cold temperatures. It worked fine?
Well, that was okay, and we had a petrol Ferguson tractor, and they worked fine. But the D4 tractors that went inland, they had to put kerosene in the sun every night, and when they got further inland, had to keep the engines running. If you turned them off, went overnight, you could not start them the next day. Yeah, they're very cold temperatures do all sorts of things. But even at Mawson itself, which only went down to minus 25 or something, cold does all sorts of things. You can't, there's no strength in your fingers. And you know, I had to use 2 thumbs to undo the little screws that just the locking screws on my measuring instruments in some cases. Interesting things. Yeah, any other thoughts?
You mentioned that you had difficulty contacting people at home.
Oh yes. Oh, it's just a quick one. Very interesting. I haven't talked at all about relationships, contacts, except to say that the messages home was 40 code words a month or something ridiculous. But very soon after the ship left to go to Mawson, one of the radio operators' wives and 2 children were hit. They were in a car that was hit T-boned by another car, and they were, all 3 of them were in hospital. Now, what do? Do you tell the bloke who's on a ship going to Mawson or not? Antarctica Division and the family agreed that they would not convey the message to the husband. So he didn't know, he wasn't alarmed, and he worked through. They recovered fully, and when he got home, he learned that his wife and children had been in this accident. Communication is very interesting when you can't sort of overcome the limits. Can you imagine, we're all here comfortable with our partners, can you imagine if you learn that your partner back home is not comfortable with being away and left alone all this time? It's an awful thing. So, and that happened on one occasion. But there was a lady, Mrs. MacDonald, in Antarctica Division, and she used to vet the messages, and she wouldn't send some of them on because it was better to leave people ignorant of some of the things that they shouldn't know. All sorts of things you mightn't think about, in fact, arise in the course of being away for a year. Yeah.
I think we were going to have to let
Yeah, you gotta
Robert.
go.
I don't know about you guys, but every time I just think I know Robert, something else comes out. I think amazing life, amazing man, amazing histories and stories. Thank you so much for sharing those.